SMTN.
How's it going, everybody, and welcome to Shin Megami Tensei Network link 362. I'm your host with the least amount of cooking experience known to man, Spencer Presley, and joining me is someone who will probably eclipse me in that department at least 10 to 11-fold. I've got special guest Jarrett Melendez. Jarrett, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
I'm tired. I'm rushing myself. Everything before this and after is one of those things where, like, hilariously, this is the least stressful part of my day. Will be this entire experience because it was like I've been up since 6 at my day job, and I've been getting ready for a convention over the weekend where I'm doing a couple of panels and getting other stuff ready, and my whole night will basically be once we're done here, I'm going to edit it, which, as sad as it is, editing is like actually like calming for me, and then I'll just immediately have to dive right back into PowerPoint and spreadsheet land for the panel. So it's that thing of like, this will be the highlight of my night. Everything else leading up to it, because Lord forbid you ever get anything ready before the week of a convention.
Oh, listen, I was just at Emerald City Comic Con last week. I was one of the special guests.
Oh, nice!
And I did, yeah, it was great. I did cooking demos all week though. Like, so I had my table set up where I was like signing books and stuff for people, and then if you're familiar with Great British Bake Off, Kim Joy was also one of the guests.
Oh, cool!
She and I, yeah, she and I did a bunch of cooking demos together from my cookbooks, and we did a panel together on Thursday, and I flew in a few days before the con, and I had to do like all of this prep work for all those demos, like, portioning everything out, doing my little mise en place, and then I had to make every dish as well because I had to do swaps because we can't actually cook live, but we can kind of like do a lot of steps. We just can't use any heating elements on the stage. So, it's just spent like an entire afternoon like setting up my table at the con, and then went into a little makeshift kitchen and like a tabletop counter oven and an induction burner, and just a real slapdash setup.
I mean, listen, you avoided any fires. You made 0 poisonous items. I mean, I figured that's the bar of success you're looking for.
Yeah, and we don't even we're not even allowed to feed the person.
You're just teasing them the whole time.
Oh yeah, I did SuperCon in Miami last year, and that show we could do everything live, so like the entire room would be filled with the scent of like freshly baked cookies,
no.
And so people would come up to the stage after, and they'd be like, "So can I like try one of those cookies?" And be like, "No, sorry, no, we're."
I'm imagining, by the way, you're just taking a really big bite while they're asking this. They're just like, "Well, I mean, someone's got to eat them. It just can't be you."
That's really funny that you say that, because Kim Joy and I were absolutely eating on stage.
Is that like is that because
so
is that like a state by state thing, or is it just like convention center to convention center thing?
I think it's a combination of all of it. Certainly, like if we were to be feeding attendees, I think that's like a liability for the con, and also the convention center. And neither Kim Joy nor I are like food safe certified or anything like that. I do all of my recipe testing and stuff at home, so like it doesn't go to anybody that I don't know personally. But in terms of just like handing out free food to the general public, we would have to be adhering to some standards, I'm sure.
I don't know. I mean, according to TikTok, all I need is $100 bill and just to go into Burger King, and I can just start throwing food at whoever I want out in the public.
You're not.
But you know what? They didn't make the food. That's on Burger King. If Burger King wants to give a bunch of homeless people food poisoning, then it won't be on me. I'm just the middleman. I'm the guy giving the money away.
Yeah, exactly. Oh man, what a world.
Nothing like clout chasing 2025 with the homeless problem of America. What a world we live in.
I just like it seems so well-meaning, and yet it's like, no, actually, this is kind of gross.
There's a large reason you don't see those in other countries, and like the videos that like whenever I see the ones kind of similar to that always make me a lot happier are the ones of just like, here's a guy renting out a community center or a church and just making a bunch of food, and then it's a normal event when they can do it. And you know what's even better? When they don't even like videotape it and there's just a couple of people afterwards saying it happened. That's even better. Is when we didn't have to do it for the camera. That's the best part.
Yeah, exactly. It's like a good deed for good deed's sake, not for a pat on the back.
But yeah, hey, speaking of patting ourselves on the back, who the heck are you and why did I invite you onto this show?
You tell me. No. Yeah, so I am a cookbook author. I'm also I write comics and graphic novels. But I believe you invited me on this very podcast because I happen to be the author of the official Persona Cookbook.
I was gonna try and make an elaborate ruse to trick absolutely nobody. We were initially trying to get this to happen last year for the Borderlands cookbook, and it just got pushed so long that we just had to.
Yeah.
It was really circumstance that you just eventually fell into the Persona verse with everything.
That's so funny. Boy, talk about right place, right time, huh?
Oh yeah.
or I suppose wrong place, wrong time with Borderlands. But man, yeah, I've written quite a few of these books. There's a couple that I'm working on right now that haven't been announced, but everything that I have coming out this year has been announced. Obviously, Persona is one of those. Borderlands is another one, and then completely unrelated to video games, I did the White Lotus cookbook, which comes out this fall, and then the official Wednesday cookbook that comes out in July.
Are we allowed to keep any? Are we allowed to put any? Trying to think the correct, not going to immediately spoil anything. How aware do you need to be of TV show spoilers when you're? Because I'm like thinking of like all the dishes I would think of in like a terrible, gross, punny way for the White Lotus. I then just go like, oh, but then if you haven't seen the show, it'll just seem very weird out of context.
White Lotus, that cookbook is really cool because we were like, what is food that you might see served
when you're eating like at the like resorts and hotels and stuff.
Yeah, so we did like real fancy pants resort food, but like done accessibly, like stuff that you can still get at like most grocery stores.
Interesting.
Although I did have a pretty sick idea of I suppose this would be a spoiler, but I did, if you haven't seen season 2, so I guess a spoiler warning here, but I did have a sick idea of doing like a blue raspberry Jello mold with Jennifer Coolidge embedded in it.
Oh my god! Like a hyper realistic like mold of her face, no less.
Yeah, like a Barbie doll sized Jennifer Coolidge, but drowning in Jello, blue Jello.
That is too funny.
Yeah, they didn't go for that.
I mean, listen, I'm gonna say. I bet I feel with confidence, knowing what Jennifer Coolidge is and is not willing to do for money, I bet you she would have signed up on it. So I'm not going to blame her for it.
No, I would never besmirch Jennifer Coolidge. In private or public.
She's held in the very, very high echelon, no matter what community you're in.
Exactly. And as someone from the queer community, I say... she's really up there.
That's true, especially after White Lotus. That's a good point.
Oh my gosh, yes. The gays, we're not trying to kill her. We're trying to exalt her.
That's true. But, me and many other people were very pleasantly shocked and surprised and delighted to find out that not only are you working on a Persona cookbook, is that somehow someone lost a bet or just really, really had a good elevator meeting, and this is actually an official cookbook, which is even funnier because, like, for people out there who like don't know, like, I feel like at least nowadays the ratio's gotten a lot closer, if not to like 50-50. But like there was definitely a while of like you would see those unofficial cookbooks back in the day of like here's the like unofficial like Hogwarts cookbook that maybe like Harry Potter looked at once in a hallway versus like now we live in a world where it's like no, there are multiple official cookbooks for like every IPN series under the sun, which is wild.
Yeah, it's really cool, and it quite selfishly, I love it because it pays my bills.
You're not just doing it for the love of the craft?
I mean, listen, Persona specifically was a dream project. The very first video game cookbook, or the very first cookbook I wrote, was for Pokemon, which itself was a dream project.
What
So I've been
what
playing
an
that for
insane first pull. I would never have guessed that was your first one.
yeah, it just I had done some recipe developing for a bunch of like the big food websites like Food 52, Bon Appetit, Epicurious. I was an editor for Epicurious for a while, working for Condé Nast, and so I'd had quite a bit of experience of developing original recipes and like formatting them in a way that is easy to read and easy to follow. And so my agent just texted me one day. Uh, it was like October. It was during New York Comic Con one year, like a couple of years ago, 2, 3 years ago. And she goes, "Hey, do you have a minute to talk?" Which anybody else sends me that text, I'm like, no, absolutely not. I hate being on the phone. This does not count.
Thank you.
But just like a casual phone call, like I don't have time for that. Like I'm busy. I don't want my no pass. My agent, though, of course I've got time for you, Kate. What do you need? And so we get on the phone, and she says, "Hey, so how would you like to work on a Pokemon cookbook?" I said, "What?" Yeah, yes, absolutely. Of course I do. What are we talking about? She's like, "Well, we'll get you some paperwork to sign, blah blah blah, and we'll have you have a meeting with the editors, and they'll see if you're a good fit. Here's what you need to do to prepare for that, blah blah blah. Just lots of little prep work and coming up with some like recipe ideas, but not the full recipes, and then just being able to present that in a Zoom call with them." So we had our Zoom. I said a bunch of things that I don't really remember now because it was all kind of a blur. I probably barely remembered it immediately after the call. And shortly after, my agent texts me and says, "Here's what they said. You're right, Kate. He is perfect for the job." And so I got it. They have since hired me to write like, I don't know, 8 or 9 more of these things. And it's been great. Persona was one that I brought up with my editor. It was something that I really loved. Obviously, food is like a big deal in the games. It's one of my favorite game franchises, and I said, it's really strange that like there isn't a cookbook for this game. Like food's such a big deal and all that. And she's like, "I know, and it's one of my favorite games too. Why don't we come up with something and see what the publisher, Inside Editions, and then see what Atlas and Sega have to say about it?" And I said, "Sure." So she put together a presentation. I weighed in on it a little bit, and yeah, one thing led to another, and everybody was on board with it, and then I eventually got to write it.
That's really crazy, especially just because, kind of like you mentioned, it is one of those things of. I look at other video game series that have already gotten the cookbook treatment, and it is kind of one of those ones of like these. Like I can think of at least 5 other book examples without like calling any out of like how has this gotten like an official cookbook when like these games, like half of the memes about them are either about eating food or cooking food, and it's just so funny of that this is that it kind of just happened so happenstance and everything for you, especially that you guys were able to bring it up because I was looking through a little bit of the publishers stuff before. I don't think Insight has done any other like Sega related cookbooks or anything, have they?
I know that I'm pretty sure that they did the Sonic, the Hedgehog, uh, cookbook.
1001 Chili Dogs
Um,
Before You Die, the cookbook.
1001 Chili Dogs to Die
Yeah,
Of.
that's true.
Um, I shouldn't say that. That's a lovely cookbook, and one of my colleagues wrote it. It's a really good cookbook.
Okay, no, yeah, that was the same publisher. Okay, so that makes a little bit more sense with the connection because the funny one, like, I always love to ask people who've like worked with either like Atlas or Sega. It's always like such a funny thing of, okay, well, like, what's the end? Because you never like you never just have your first thing be, oh, well, I want to make a Persona 5 cookbook. You know, like there's always like kind of got to be like A led to B, B led to Z, and all those kind of like steps eventually.
Yeah, yeah, and that's really what this was I wrote I think I wrote I think three cookbooks for them before we started kind of talking about doing Persona. Um, so I had done Pokemon and RuneScape, and Percy Jackson, and then yeah, I brought up Persona. Sadie and I went through the whole process of pitching it, and then in the meantime, I worked on um, Borderlands, and then for a separate publisher, I worked on the Wednesday cookbook.
Oh, okay.
Um, yeah, and then yeah, it wasn't until last summer that I actually like dug into doing the actual recipe development and testing, and then writing the manuscript and stuff. I think I turned in my all of my final stuff like last end of August, early September, or something like that.
Do you remember, like, would it have also been back in 2024, or do you think it would have been any earlier, like when the pitch initially had started?
The pitch probably initially started like, oof, that's a great question. It might have been like end of 23 or like very beginning of 24.
Okay.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's not out yet. It's coming out. What's it? The 23rd of September. Which, thank
Mm-hmm.
you. It's the world's easiest birthday gift for my wife to get me now. My birthday is the
Oh,
21st.
perfect.
She knows I.
Oh,
She
nice.
knows I will be able to do. Well, I assume I will. I will butcher as many of these recipes and things included because it just seems like the easiest kind of thing of like, well, I'm going to want to try at least most of the things in that book, no matter what you put in there, because I've seen at least the
Mm-hmm.
three sample pages in there, and I'm like, well, yeah, that just like writes itself as like a video. I'm just being like, all right, well, let's have incompetent Spencer try to make this dish and just see what happens afterwards.
I can't wait to see some of the videos that'll come out of
Yeah,
this.
is that ever like? Because what was funny is when I was looking up stuff for like researching you, most of the stuff that comes up is ironically just videos of other people cooking like from your books. Is that like a cool thing to see? Is that like surreal? Like what is that like?
Oh, it's such a delight. I remember uh the I think it might have been like the day after the election last year. Was feeling not great about the state of things, and my partner and I had spent the entire day together. We'd spent like that entire week together, so like all the days leading up to the election and the days after it. Um, and we weren't feeling super great or optimistic, but I got a DM from a woman in Australia uh, via Instagram, and she reached out because she was like, "Hey, I just wanted to let my son saw your cookbook at his like local school book fair, and he just absolutely had to have it. He is absolutely bananas over Pokemon, and he is just learning how to bake. He is having so much fun baking through it." And yeah, just wanted to let you know, like, thanks for making this book, and thanks for, giving my son and I something fun to do together. Um, and then she said one of the recipes that he'd made that he really liked, and it was these Morpico little two-tone chocolate covered cookies. and I was like, oh, that's really wonderful. Like it really made my day. It was so sweet, and I was like, oh, I would love to see pictures of the cookies. Like that always like is so fun to see, how people have made the stuff that I've made. And she's very shortly after sends a couple of pictures of her son who is literally dressed as Ash, very proudly holding a plate of these chocolate dipped
Oh, that's
cookies,
awesome.
and smiling so big for the camera, and I just immediately started crying.
That's awesome.
It was just so sweet. Just like, uh, I that was something that like I didn't really think about when I was working on the book. Was like, the people that will be, I think about the people that will buy these books, um, in the broad sense, and like, how do I make this accessible to as many people as
Hmm.
possible? But what I don't always think about is like the the, the joyous part of the experience, like the like sharing little moments and like making memories together, and like just, I don't know, just like that this little boy got dressed up as Ash so that he could spend the day baking with his mom. And that's like the most wholesome, sweetest, hopeful thing I could think of in that moment, and it was just overwhelming. Um, so it's nice to see like that side of the impact that books like this have.
Well, I mean, it's got to be also crazy just because you've kind of dipped your foot into so many different fandoms. I can only imagine like
Yeah.
the kind of reactions to it. Like even with the Persona one alone, like by the way, I don't know how it ended up in number one. Well, I know. Congrats, at least on Amazon. It's currently number one. I love the category. You got snuck into video game strategy guides, to which I
I saw
I
that.
can only hope someone leaves a very middling 3-star review that says great recipes. How the fuck do I beat this boss? Like this has not helped me with this final boss fight at all.
I don't know how to make these social links, and this book is not helping at all.
Yeah, this game's just been making me really sad, but I guess the food I've been comfort eating it, so maybe that was like the like tie-in with each other.
I, it landed in so many strange categories. Like, there were some that made, so on like the first day, the response from Persona fans buying this book was bananas. Like, so I, like a crazy person, spent the entire first 24 hours just like going back to Amazon and just refreshing and seeing like how much further it went up in the rankings, and like pretty immediately we hit the I think it was like video game art books we were number one in, which I was like, okay, well, be cool to be high up in a relevant category. And then we did. We did exactly that. We were number one in celebrity slash TV show
Oh,
cookbooks, which is
nice.
where like kind of all the pop culture cookbooks end up in there. And then also just the cookbooks by like celebrity chefs. So like Ina Garten was number one until we overtook her. So I am the new Contessa, by law. Um, um, and but then we ended up at like number two for overall cookbooks, and then uh, the sales got so bonkers that we actually broke into the top 100 of all books sold on Amazon, and we topped out at number 69, which we were all
Nice.
very proud of.
Nice. Screenshots were shared, I'm
Yes.
sure.
Oh, yes, I screenshotted it several times just to make sure that they took, because I got paranoid that I would lose them somehow.
Do you have any highlights or personal favorite, either whether it be like comments or things you've seen online to people reacting to this being real?
So I shared this on my Instagram, and there were just like a lot of people who were like, we're going to be serving the boys mystery food X. That was a really good comment on my Instagram post. And then yeah, just like a lot of people being like, oh, I hope this is in there. I can't wait to make this. Can't wait to make the curry and coffee from LeBlanc. Um, and so far, all the things that people have been excited about are things that are indeed in the book. So that's
Nice.
that's a plus. Yeah.
Um, My first one that, like, I don't know why I wasn't expecting it sooner, but I think I was like, whenever Atlas themselves like made a post about it earlier this week, I got such a kick out of the first comments I saw were just people being like, "Oh my God, finally a cookbook that is literally unmakeable but for women." Should be like, thank God, a series of infamous for women cooking representation finally has its greatest challenger yet.
Oh my God, yeah, it was very funny making all of those all of those recipes because of course like I go in uh from the angle of like, well, this needs to be good. Like it does need to actually be edible, good food. Um and boy, Mystery Food X, that was a challenge for sure. The rest were just like, okay, well, like, this character is not good at making onigiri, but like that's fine. Like that doesn't, that's not as big of a hurdle to jump. But this was like, no, this is like something that in game looks inedible, and we want it to look inedible but be edible. And so we strayed a bit from what the girls actually shop for. Um, we strayed quite a bit from what the girls shop for because there was just no way to make the color right. Um,
Yeah, that very
uh,
something about that comically death it looming purple about Mystery Food X, just hard to really mimic with it still being edible.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And the things that they put in are like peppers and seafood and all this other stuff. That was like if I put all that in, like that's fine. Like I could make something delicious from the ingredients that they shop for, but it won't look right. Um, so instead, I went for, I think, did I make it? I might have made it completely vegetarian. I'd have to look. One second. Um, and so I was like, okay, well, what's gonna make this purple, um, or at least close to purple? And we ended up landing with beets.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
and yeah, so we landed on beets and purple carrots, purple sweet potato, and eggplant. Yeah, so it'll be a completely vegan um, curry.
See, my when I was like telling someone about it, their initial guess was like having purple rice as the base, and I was like, I don't know how universally loved purple rice is definitely not a everybody likes it kind of a thing.
Yeah, not everybody likes it, and tricky to find too.
Very, yeah, that's also a good point.
Yeah. So yeah, we that is what we went with, and I made the thing, and it was really tasty. It was. I was really, really shockingly happy with it. um, I mean, what's not to love about a bunch of like stewed vegetables in like a rich curry sauce that just happens to be reddish purple.
Now, there were a couple other funny things that I saw as like an immediate one. The first one absolutely was not surprised by. So the hardest hitting question, I'm sure you've already been asked it before by people, but at least we can get an official yay or nay. Should all six of us Persona 1 and 2 fans hold our breath for any recipes?
I am so sorry, but yeah, we just did 3, 4, and 5, and specifically the remakes of those, not the originals. Which you might think like, oh, surely all the food is the same, and it's not
No,
quite the
it's
same.
true.
There are things missing and things added from each game. But yeah, yeah. Unfortunately, no. We did stick with 3, 4, and 5.
Well, the motivator to put the money hat business mode on is well, if you guys make it sell really really well, then they're going to eventually run out of recipes to make from those three games, and then they'll have to go to do 1 and 2.
I listen. You tell everybody to buy like 6 copies of this thing, and we'll see what we can do.
We need this to like. We need this to like triumph over the Pokemon one, just to really confuse people, just to be like, well, I mean, there wasn't plan on having like 900 editions of this thing, but we've just got to will it into existence now.
I listen. I am begging all of you to get me on the New York Times bestseller list with this cookbook.
Well, then it's just got to be like, so you've got what it's like what over 50 recipes, right?
Yeah, I think 55 or 56.
I imagine then the hard
Precise.
part's got to be like, well, what do you like? What do you then kind of like pick as like, what's the big one you want like everybody to make, or like what's like the showpiece meal in the whole book? Like then you got to pick a favorite.
Yeah. I mean, as far as something that is almost quite literally a showpiece, it's got to be the Cosmic Tower burger.
Oh, I was
Um,
gonna say I don't think yeah, because the only recipes we've seen is the katsudon, the steak, and what was On's? On's was the strawberry cake.
yes, yes, on strawberry cake. Yeah. If you're looking for like the stuff that is like pretty iconic, like the big challenge things, like the stuff that increases your guts by quite a bit, um, in the various games, like don't worry, they're there.
I just want to see the picture of because like ironically the one I'm most excited to make would be and I forget the name of it, but the one from four with the mega meat bowl. I think it is just the mega meat bowl.
Yeah, it's the rainy day mega beef bowl.
Yes, like that one has been one I've always wanted to eat, which was funny because for the longest time I didn't know that I literally thought for the longest time it was just a bowl of rice and beef. And then someone was like, "No, like half of that meal is like onions." It's like I thought
Yeah,
all of that was just beef. I was like, "Oh, I could definitely do that." Whereas like now I'm like, "You
yeah.
know what? I've matured. I could eat at least 6,000 calories in onions, I'm sure now."
it's it is a ludicrous amount of all of the things. It's a ludicrous amount of beef and onions and rice. But that Cosmic Tower burger though, that it is a not insignificant amount
Well,
of
I was
food.
gonna say,
Um,
did you have to get like is there a canonical number of patties? They're like, oh no, it has to be 28. You can't do 29 patties. That's too many.
I think it is. I think it's 8 patties, but they're the whole size of the burger. It's like a 12-inch diameter patty. Um, I'm pretty sure it's 8. Um, that feels right. Um, and yeah, I mean, there's just simply no way for one person to eat
Oh,
it.
don't. Why
It's
would you put that
6.
out there? You're now just everyone listening to this is like, oh yeah, my big back can handle it. I can get that bad boy down. Don't worry.
I am begging you not to eat it. It's it is it's 9 pounds of ground beef is what you need to make this.
It's like someone's when they buy that big tube at the grocery store, they're gonna be like, this is for one meal.
Yes.
This is just for one meal in there.
I I am begging you not to not to eat this one
I didn't
person.
even, you know what? I didn't
Uh,
even think about it. This might be the first cookbook to like have to like we're gonna have to put some disclaimers in front of this thing and be like, listen, folks, this is how to make it. You're not supposed to ingest it. You're gonna need at least a party
yeah,
of 8 people to finish this meal.
minimum. When I made it, when I made it, the pictures that my roommate and I took, we did a cross section of it. We like both held it for just like comparison's sake. I think I put my hand up like on top of it to be like, no, no, it's it's a very big burger, you guys. um, it's got 30 slices of American cheese, like you do. Um, it's a big old burger.
So now to not get like too into the grassroots of this, because like I'm such a when it comes to food, I'm always thinking about like the whole experience with it. Of like I'm thinking like, okay, well, here's this 18-pound burger that's gonna kill me in one bite. But then I'm also wondering,
Mhm.
what am I pairing with this? Like what drink should I bring? Like, are we getting potato wedge fries? Do we want like crinkle cut? Like, do you even are you is that in your head when you're thinking about it of just being like, what would someone pair with these meals?
Gosh, sometimes, yeah, I don't think you just eat the burger. Like it's just, that's the challenge is you have to eat the whole thing. But yeah, I could absolutely see like fire up your air fryer, or if you're feeling buck wild, fire up an actual deep fryer, make make just a few basket of fries, get like 12 people to come over, cut this thing like a giant cake, uh, and and yeah, have at it. I think fries would be great. If we're going like classic classic malt shop diner style, like throw a milkshake in with it, you know?
Oh yeah, you know, I
Um,
mean, once you've hit the 4-digit calorie mark, really, it's all just it's all
it's
just
does it make a difference at
no.
that point?
You're getting to the same destination. Just don't think about it. Just open your mouth. It'll be fine.
Oh boy.
What's funny is I didn't even think about this until I was looking at the listing. So what's funny is like it is very much going off of like Persona 3 Reload, Golden, and Royal. But I didn't
Mhm.
even think about this till I saw the listing of it, and I hope we're not jinxing this into having to get the Atlas cops into changing anything. I just realized because you referenced Fuka's Cooking Club by by the tiniest of meanings, we've given at least 1% of love to Persona 3 Portable because that was only in the FEMC route.
Oh gosh, that's right.
So we've
Huh.
brought her back from non-canon purgatory for one cookbook, and I'm here for it.
Gosh, I'm gonna have to plead ignorance on that one because I.
Listen. We this series needs all the wins it can get when it comes to positive representations of women cooking. So I'll gladly just put that out there. People can do with it what they want.
Absolutely. Huh. Oh my gosh.
Because yeah, in the main game and in Reload, there is a lot more cooking, especially in P3 Reload with it. But the the extra like kind of funny thing of it of just being like, yeah, all the cooking you do is all at home. All the other stuff with it, I forgot, was only in that one route in the non-existent club. Now, why would Fuka then choose art club over cooking club when clearly cooking club is the better of the school activities? God only
Agreed.
knows. But also, we all know Fuka is very clearly like a chess club or computer club girl. So she's in the wrong club no matter what option really happens.
Yeah, that's yes, absolutely.
I do like, as you can probably tell, I have a bajillion food and recipe and other thing questions for it here, but in case
Yeah.
anyone is not aware, you're actually you're not a fake fan. You're not just here. You saw Persona 5 and Super Smash Brothers Ultimate one day and went, you know what? This seems like a cool series. What's your what's your history with the fandom? How did you get involved? Please, by the way, don't say Super Smash Brothers if that is how you got involved. I will be very embarrassed.
Oh no, would I would I would pick up on that cue and I would lie.
Okay,
But no,
thank you.
the truth is, yeah, the truth really is that I did not get into Persona until 5, um, and oh gosh, it was one of my friends got me into it. I just remember seeing like probably on their Instagram story or something like that that they were playing it, and I was like, man, the style of this looks very cool. Uh, Let me ask you a million questions about this series. Uh, and they told me as much as they felt like telling me before they needed to get back to their game. Uh, and I said, yes, I think this is it for me. And so I jumped right into 5. I fell completely in love with the franchise, like right then and there. Just like the music, all the character design, the angst. Oh, the teenage angst is really dialed up to 1,000 in these games, and I am here for it.
Now, do you remember, would this have been like pre-Royal or like after 2020?
This was pre-Royal.
Okay.
Um, yeah, and then this was pre-Royal, and then I immediately bought Royal when it came out. Yeah.
Which I cannot
Yep.
believe it's been almost 5. It's been over 5 years in Japan, but the fact that it's, I think next month will be the like 5-year anniversary in the West is just completely crazy.
That is wild. That feels like that came out like last year.
Oh yeah, like all those like early pandemic games like feel like a fever dream of like, oh, that wasn't that long ago. And then I think about the
Yeah.
fact that like, yeah, that was like the PS5 wasn't even out when I was playing that. I was like, oh no.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, you're right. Yeah, I think I think a friend of mine was playing it like kind of immediately before Royal came out. Not immediately, but like, within months of it coming out.
I feel like I would be shocked if anyone had a weirder lead up into Royal than me. For whatever reason, I remember I was reviewing it at the time, and I had like a code maybe a month and a half to like 2 months early, and I had never beaten the original at that point. So what I
Oh,
wanted to do was I was like, okay, let's finally beat the original and then just immediately jump into Royal to just have a really good comparison of like what's new, what's adjusted, what's missing, things like that. And I was really
sure.
glad I did that, but what was funny was in my worry at the time I was like, "Oh, well, like what if I get sick? 'Cause I'm just playing these like two like really long RPGs back to back." And it was funny like I
Yeah.
I was shocked that it wasn't the case. I think it was a testament of like how much I really liked jumping into that world of because there are so many different things to do. I never had that kind of
hmm
FOMO hanging over me of like, oh well, dang it, what if I miss this person's social link, or what if I don't get to do this? Of like, oh, like I'll have a complete other calendar year of new and old stuff to do for anything I missed, which was kind of a nice like weight off my chest.
Yeah, that feels like almost the right way to do it because you for exactly that reason. Like I remember on my first playthrough, I was like, "Oh, how do you decide who to hang out with?" And like, how do you, it was very overwhelming at first.
Well, and that's the way I always find it interesting. Of there are those people out there who kind of have that like choice anxiety almost of like, oh well, I have to have a guide or else I feel like I'm missing out. And I always like tell people it's like there is no wrong way to play. Like whether you play with a
hmm
day by day guide or just go to the arcade every day and just blow off every social link possible, it's like the more unique you make your playthrough, the better. As I feel like it is, because it's like those 100% runs like can be satisfying, but it is kind of that like running around, never really knowing what's the right or wrong way to play is always nice too.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, like, I don't know, I just I eventually like found pretty naturally that I had favorite characters that I liked interacting with. Um, and so it's like, well, that will be my party. It's as simple as that.
So, for you at least, did you have much of a history in terms of playing other RPGs or anything sort of similar to it in the past, or like did you have anything to kind of compare it to as a jumping off point, or was it sort of like the first of its kind of a game for you?
I mean, I had definitely played many, many JRPGs. I come from the school of Earthbound and Chrono Trigger. Those were like my first two.
Oh my God, Chrono Trigger turning 30 this week made me just feel anciently old.
Why did you have to say that? Why did you have to say something that completely ruined the podcast?
Well, it's just we're so young and hip that clearly we experienced it after the fact, but we were just fingers on the pulse, even as early Zoomer 2000 babies as we were. That's why we know about it.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. That's right. 25, I am. Certainly not turning 40 this year.
No, couldn't be. No, not at all. I don't even
No,
know. I don't even think we can count that high actually.
no, no. We haven't learned that in school yet.
Exactly. But yeah, like so when you were playing it, was it one of those things of like, okay, you're playing through, you're enjoying it, Persona 5 is such a good one. I think of like visually catching people's attention so quickly.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
was it one of those things of after playing it, you kind of then started looking back into the other games, or like what sort of eventually brought you over to 3 and 4 eventually?
Yeah, I mean, gosh, I really, I was just like, well, I just want more of this, and I knew that the others were not going to be like exactly the same, like, in terms of like plot or like how they're stylized, but
Hmm.
they're all stylized in their own way. And all the characters are charming in their own way, and like obviously there are some links, like obviously like Igor shows up in all the games, like spoilers, but um, uh, uh, yeah, there's always going to be like a velvet room, right? But yeah, it was just like, this is so good. Obviously, this has come from something. Obviously, like, these games are popular enough to have all been remade. So,
Many
um,
times. So many.
many, many times. And then, just like also remade in like very recent history. So I was like, all right, cool. Well, this is a great way to just kind of jump in and, um, experience these. So like, I am not a purist. I have only played the remakes of 3 and 4. Um, but
I will
gosh, I love them.
I will say, if you do get the chance, uh, there's definitely the argument for 4, but I think there's a lot like more diminishing returns from kind of going back from one to the other, even though they are very different. If you
Hmm.
haven't ever like had the chance to just sit down and play, especially works well like on something like a either the like original PSP or like a Steam Deck or Switch. Persona 3 Portable, especially after playing Reload, is such a drastically different streamlined experience that like that they still hold up very very well, especially with the different protagonist choice.
Oh, excellent. Okay, cool. Yeah, I think I might have actually bought that in a bundle.
Oh yeah, they love bundling all three of those because they did the back in 2022. Yeah, 2022 was when they all eventually came out. No, apologies. 2022 was when Royal came to everything. 2023 in
Right.
January is when they all came out on all the systems eventually. And I think they were on Game
Yes.
Pass for a long time as well. So it's like, thankfully, it has never been easier to play any of these games as long as you want to play 3, 4, and 5. So like, that's at least been kind of a nice thing for it. It's not like, oh, hi, let me recommend you this $200 PSP only game in 2020.
Enjoy.
It's worth it, but I mean, listen, it's $200 is $200.
Yeah, yeah. $200 could buy you, well, certainly the ingredients to make a Cosmic Tower burger.
Yeah, I'd love to buy a $200 copy of Persona 3 Portable, but I've got to at least order 8 copies of this Persona official cookbook. So that's where my priorities are at.
Yeah, we got to get this thing on some bestseller lists, you guys.
Yeah, is it too late? By the way, because one of the things that shocked me the most about your previous works that have come out is that because of you, I've now discovered that Barnes and Noble exclusives are not tied exclusively to nonfiction books. When I found out that Barnes and Noble had like an exclusive cookbook version of like I think it was Percy Jackson, I was like,
Yeah.
Excuse me, Barnes and Noble? We're now doing exclusive covers for cookbooks, which, mind you, I'm all here for. I'm a sucker for variant covers.
Me too. Yeah, I was blown away by that. My editor told me that it was happening, before the news broke like publicly, and I was like, "What? Really?" Like, and I had the same reaction. I was like, "I didn't know they did that for like not, you know, just new like new fiction books." So I was as surprised as you, and it's a really cool cover too. I really like the treatment that they gave it.
Yeah, the cover art for it, especially because I feel like I'm always a fan of when these variant covers come up, whether they be like retailer exclusive or like directly from the publisher. It always kind of feels
Hmm.
like they can be a little bit more creative with the covers and kind of not have to worry as much about being like, okay, this is for everyone to kind of catch their eye and be a little bit more like tailored to like either fans or something of this, which is always cool.
Yeah, absolutely. It Yeah, and they did such a good job with it. I have no idea what will happen in terms of like any kind of covers and stuff for this book. But I would be thrilled to see. Um, yeah, what a delight it would be to see more than one version of this book. Um, yeah.
I'm always curious, by the way, when especially for like books that are this close to coming out. Obviously, I feel like the contents of the book have been locked down for quite a while for it.
Hmm.
When you see stuff like the cover not like final cover not officially revealed or like not officially done, but it looks like it is pretty done with it. How often in those cases have you ever noticed of like them actually ever drastically changing?
Not. I've never noticed anything drastic before. It's rare that I get shown covers until they're like done. Um, but I think, yeah, gosh, I can't think of a single one. It's certainly not one that I've worked on where it's like, oh, this is not at all what I was expecting based on the last draft. It's always just like little tweaks and stuff like that.
So this one, I don't even know if you've heard much about it, but have you heard any people mention anything specifically about your cover? There's one thing off about it that's been it's not like a nitpick, but it was a funny one of like once I saw someone say, I was like, oh, I can't unsee it now.
Oh, interesting. No, I haven't seen it. Should I
So
pull it up right now?
because they are all tied off of the re-release, they're all using the most modern art for them, except the one for you. The one for you on Persona 4 Golden is his cover art image for the original PS2 one. And
Oh,
so the
interesting.
one big one was like, oh yeah, once you notice they're not using the golden art, you can't unsee it because it's a thing of like they're very similar in terms of how they all look from the remakes to the original, but because they were different artists, I forget, oh, sorry, not different artists because they were doing a different like kind of more popular art style. All the official art for Golden looks very different than the PS2 one, which is almost a little darker.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, I did not even clock that. How funny.
So it was one of those things of like, does it ever actually matter? Of course not. Do me and like the three guys on Reddit who like to notice little weird things like that point out? Of course that's the first thing we'll notice. Of course that's it.
Oh,
God forbid.
absolutely. Yeah. No, that's great. That's so funny. Yeah, I'll be interested to see like how this will change. And I think the one on Amazon is also. Oh wait, maybe this is the one that I have. There was one that got loaded onto Amazon, and there was one that like I loaded that I uploaded onto my Instagram, and they were different at the time, but now I'm not sure if this is the same as what I have on Instagram or not. Um, but yeah, it's yeah, these things go through so many different drafts and tweaks and stuff like that. There's a lot of people overseeing all of that, so I'm not really sure what the final one will look exactly like. I'm sure it will be close to this, but yeah.
Does when it kind of comes to like the pictures, I assume on like the ones you are taking for the recipes and stuff, you have a lot more kind of control over which ones are going to be included and stuff like that. For the covers, do you ever usually get much of a say of like, oh well, this might be a good idea, or does the publisher have their own kind of graphic designers who throw you some templates?
Oh, the so the cool thing is like once I've done all of my portion of the work, which is like writing the manuscript and shooting, I don't shoot the photography for any of these
Oh,
books,
really?
because yeah, I'll shoot reference photos, and then I'll shoot something that's like this is what I want it to look like, but I don't have like a studio for doing food photography, and I certainly don't have the kind of inventory that you would need to work on the breadth of cookbooks that I've worked on in terms of like plates and serving stuff. Um, so like, you know, what you see, what you see in Persona and like how things will be plated, what they'll be plated on specifically will be very different from what you might see in RuneScape, and those will both be very different from what you would see in White Lotus, and those would all be very different for like it's so many different styles and like themes used in all these different properties that like there's just no way I would have room for all of those plates and flatware and
I was
cutlery
gonna
and
be
all
like,
that.
I was gonna compliment. You must have an eclectic bowl collection. I can only imagine. Just be like
Right.
all these. God forbid you ever get rid of any of them. You have to keep every single one.
Oh my gosh, yeah, seriously. And to be fair, like I do have like quite a few different plates and bowls and stuff. I have several different sets that all match. And I do have a bunch of plates and bowls that would probably have been appropriate for Persona, but like still not enough to like do a full photo shoot. So like that's like one hurdle for food photography. Uh,
Interesting.
yeah. And so because I don't have any of that, I just, like I said, I shoot reference photos. That all goes to a food stylist and a photographer, and then they'll do a shoot, over, a week or two, of just making every single dish that's going to have a photo in the book, um, and then uh, shooting them. Um, so all of those photos, all the photos that they take during the photo shoot, that's what gets used
Do you ever get a kick
in the
out of
final.
looking at your reference photo versus the final shot of just like if they look how like disparagingly different or not?
Like I'm great with flavor. I'm great with explaining how to make stuff. I am okay at decorating and styling and plating. Plating I'm pretty good at. Like I can compose like a pretty plate, but like uh for Pokemon, for example, some of the faces were not right.
Oh, I didn't even
Which
think
is
about that because yeah, obviously the easy ones you're gonna see like are the Pikachu's or whatever, but yeah, there are some weird faces of like yeah, I would not want to try and line up whatever to make like Pikachu, not even Pikachu, like Bulbasaur's jaw structure. When I think about that.
yeah, exactly. And I just like I don't have the skill to do that, but I can explain how to do it. Um I just can't, always execute it like perfectly. It's certainly not like photo worthy myself. And so that's where the stylists come in. So I'll be like, like this, and they have all the same reference photos that I do. They have all the access to the different assets and what the characters look like and stuff. So between my reference photos and then like what a thing is actually supposed to look like, for example, Pichu's face, they go, all right, yeah, we can do this.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay, that is really cool. I did not know that. So, um, I'm sure I'll initially come back to it or whatever with it. But if if there was anything out there for anyone who might be like on the fence for either pre-ordering the book or just curious of like, I will not be shocked if this is a lot of Atlas fans' first cookbooks. Not to out us as a community. But there has been a lot of people who are really excited from it. People who do a lot of like cooking and not with it. But if, for anyone kind of out there teetering the hovering over the pre-order button, as they would say, what
Mhm.
would be your like thing of just being like, oh well, A, B, or C reason for it. I'm not even gonna lie. The main reason I pre-ordered it was I was interested in the idea, and then when I saw it was going to be a hardcover, I was like, oh, I'm a slut for a hardcover art.
Uh,
Anything in a hardcover
yeah,
print. I'm like, you got me. You could sell me sticky
absolutely.
notes in a hardcover print, and I'd be there for it.
Yeah, I mean it's gonna be a beautiful book. Insight Editions always does such a gorgeous job with all of their like I almost said interior design with their graphic design. Like I remember when I got like even just the PDFs, but like when I got my advanced copy of Pokemon, I was like, oh man, just like flipping through, I was like, this is such a beautiful book. Like the photography was really good. Like the way that they like dropped all the like different Pokemon on the page looked really good. And like, you can see like these are clearly just like sample spreads um of the interiors, like Shinjiro's exquisite katsudon. Like if you zoom in, it's all lorem ipsum all over. It's not the official text yet. Um,
It was
but
Wingdings edition. Is the
it,
that's what everyone gets.
yeah, exactly. Um, but yeah, if you're looking at that on the Amazon listing, like yeah, those are not the official of final. That's certainly not the final text. Um, but like they did really cool job of like taking kind of like the elements of graphic design from each game and then putting those in on the pages. Um, yeah, I can guarantee it's going to be a beautiful book. Um, and if you look at those pages, you can see that like you get all the info you need, like how much each thing makes, how long it'll take, and what the difficulty level is. And I always really strive to like make all of these cookbooks mostly like easy and intermediate with like 2 to 5 or 6 hard recipes. So like the majority of what's in there is going to be stuff that's either easy or intermediate. So there's enough in there for people that are beginners and just learning how to cook for the first time, and there's um, stuff in there that will like still be interesting for people that are a little bit more experienced in the kitchen.
I was trying to take a look at this. I don't know if you would know already. Do you guys have a dimensions for like either how like the height and width of it?
Oh, I don't know.
As my massive collection of zero cookbooks as for reference, I always kind of wonder like you probably want it to be decently large, but I doubt it's like going to be one of those things where it's like a coffee table size book.
No, it won't be coffee table size, but it'll be pretty close to like a standard cookbook size. If you go to like any of the listings for my other cookbooks from Inside Edition specifically, those have all been exactly the same
Oh,
size.
okay.
I won't guarantee that that will be the case here, but I feel like they have a pretty standard size that they stick with for the cookbooks. So I would guess. I'm just looking at the Percy Jackson listing now. Um, so Percy Jackson came in at 8 by 10.
Okay, yeah. So I figure pretty much anything close to letter size, especially in
Yeah,
that format, like that's usually pretty good without being too overly large.
yeah, yeah. I think people will be pleased. Yeah, just for comparison's sake, I popped over at the RuneScape one. That is also 8 by 10.
So let me see here. I've got all my things I want to ask you, and then as I just talk to you more, I just think of like 20 other things I want to ask you about with it. So apologies, I'm just giving you the scatter shot approach with everything, but I want to go back to my.
Listen, we could do a part two.
Oh man, we could do the whole like we could make a three-course meal episode out of it of just being like I want to talk to you before the book, after the book, and then after I've massacred everything in there you put in there. It'd be like we'll have a post-mortem from the community. We're gonna be grading these recipes, and we're gonna let you know what exactly we thought about all 50 of these.
Oh my God, what a nightmare!
It's just like a PTA meeting that you just can't escape.
But I'll be honest here. Obviously, you can cut this part out of the final. But like, if you do really want to do that, I would be game. That would be very fun.
Oh, I'm always down for bringing people back on, even if my favorite is when we can trick people into thinking that it's going to be related, and then we'll just talk about something completely. We'll just do a season 3 White Lotus spoiler cast together, and that'll be everyone getting tricked into the show.
Perfect.
But yeah, one of the things I wanted to ask for with you specifically with this book, and I'm not sure how much of this would have been you getting notes directly either from the publisher or any of the other parties involved with it, but
hmm
from conception to your final script of everything with it, were there any kind of surprises or any other like pushbacks you got of okay, you can't do this, or try to change this, any like notes, whether it be from like Sega or Atlas, that came back that would be like, oh, I wouldn't have thought of this or anything like that.
Hmm. No, not really. Actually, like they were pretty happy with the initial outline that we sent because there's just so much food in the games that are like one-to-one conversions for just like stuff that is real in the real world. Um, I think the only real notes that I got back, which were like not a surprise, yeah, they were not really surprising, but I was just like, oh yeah, no, that does actually make sense. Where I think in one of the game, maybe in two of the games, I gave like like one or two characters like two or three recipes instead of just like having it be evenly spread, and we were like, no, we got to spread the love as evenly as possible between all of the characters and then all the different shops and restaurants and stuff.
Oh, I didn't I
So I
didn't
think
even think about them being kind of tied to locations and specific characters I would get, but then I was like thinking about like, oh yeah, like or do you have like any like weird ones of like social link specific like recipe ideas or anything like that?
yeah, there are a bunch of social link things throughout, especially in I think especially in 3 and 4, but there's social link stuff throughout. Uh, yeah, like oh gosh, now I'm thinking. Uh, yeah, the ramen that you get with Ryuji, in five, um, he like very specifically orders a specific type of ramen during your like social link ramen date with him, and he explains why he likes it and how he would always get it after running practice, and why it was good for after running and stuff. And I was like, oh, that's a cool detail. Like, let's make specifically that kind of ramen for him then.
Okay. And were there any ones you kind of either had any liberty with of like, oh, this seems like something a character may have liked or would have been up their alley, but it wasn't necessarily specifically mentioned in game?
Yeah, so for Morgana, um, hmm, for Morgana, we did macarons in the shape of cat faces.
Oh, nice.
Yeah,
You just
and
want to
they're
for Morgana's page just be like, buy the largest piece of tuna possible and just put it on a plate and just be like, there you go. It's really
I
easy.
know I I cannot tell you how often I'm tempted by stuff like that, where it's just like, oh, it'd be so
How
sweet
lore
just to be
accurate
like,
do I
yeah,
want this to be?
yeah. It's like, because if I'm lore accurate, it's funny for the fans and it's easy for me. But no, I went with one of the trickier pieces of pastry to to make for old Morgana.
I mean, listen, as long as you found a way to sneak in a Last Supper reference for Akinari's meal, I'm sure no one will be disheartened.
Oh my gosh.
What is this really depressing hospital plate meal for? I don't get I don't get this one at all. Just comes with a
Well, this
really
is
sad letter from someone's mom for some reason. I don't know what's up with this meal.
Can you imagine? Oh my gosh. There are some, oh man, I won't go too much into like what is and isn't in the book,
Oh, I
but
know. I
man,
mean, I'm. It's taking everything in my body not for you to out yourself on Akechi's all cabbage meal you've made in the 50-foot pancake tower for for a for Akechi.
my gosh, oh, the,
Yeah,
I
the
wish.
meme meals. I would almost feel like I would have to like hold myself back and be like, oh no, you have to like make this like yeah, somewhat serious. You can't just have this be like inside joke references to the meal book.
Right, yeah, it's there's so much that you want to put in as like, we'll call it fan service, not in the broadest sense of fan service, but just like, yeah, fans will get this, and uh, yeah, some of it is just like, is this too inside baseball? Maybe we just like play it straight and we do something that like actually, it's certainly a delicate balance, but I'm really really happy with everything that made it in. Gosh, it was just such a fun book to work on. Um, and there were some things that were just like, there's some really cool like visual things in there that we put in where it's like, this is not a food item that shows up in the game, but this food item represents something like big that happens in game, or like an ongoing social link thing that happens in game. And like it, you end up with just like a very visually interesting little recipe, and I was like, very, there's a lot of creative problem solving goes into these things.
Oh, I mean, I can only imagine like what the notes from like your first initial draft of ideas to completion must look like in terms of just like ideas that either like grew into other things or like ones you either had to like throw out or like I feel like the hard part almost with the cookbook is like there's no real beginning, middle, and end to it. So it's kind of like you're done when you either have to be done or you never really know when to be done.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the only real limits were just like, well, we want to have it be an even spread between the three games. We want, uh, you know, um, every character, every main character to be um, represented in some way. Um, and you have 55 recipes to do it in.
For you though, because like one of my favorite things with the way that the Persona series has always used food is, ironically, it's been a good way of me learning about foods either I never would have seen just in my like day-to-day life with it, or foods I might not have wanted to try. But it's kind of that thing of like whether it be like watching someone eating a meal on TV or in a movie or even a game, kind of makes you more interested in trying it in person. Was there anything that might not have been something you would have thought of eating yourself, but was like, oh, this sounds like it would be good, and you kind of surprised yourself in terms of like food you might not have normally eaten or ordered?
Oh gosh, I don't think so. I think everything in this is stuff that I would say I had probably eaten a version of almost everything, and like 99% of what is in this book. Um, so I used to live in Japan for a while. Um, I lived there a couple of times, and I've been back to visit a few times. And so, I in the Persona games, like there's a lot of Japanese food in all these games. From the beef bowls to the specific style of curry um, to like the traditional meals that people like to have, beef bowl, all of that stuff falls under Japanese cuisine. So it was all stuff that I was familiar with, stuff that I had made myself, stuff that I had eaten a number of times. Gosh, there is just nothing more comforting than a beef bowl sometimes.
Oh God.
Yeah, just boy oh boy, like the the days that I got to work on uh, rainy day uh, mega beef bowl were just dynamite because it was like, well, we have leftovers for the next several days. 'Cause it's just me and one roommate, and so she ends up being kind of my main taste tester for a lot of this stuff, and it was just like, oh boy, we get to eat Japanese food for like an entire summer. Cool.
Yeah,
um,
I'm always like thinking about it of like, yeah, it's like it's those moments of like, oh, thank God I don't live by myself. Otherwise, be like, I have I would have no idea what to do with the rest of this food.
oh my gosh, yeah. So I try to I try to thank them as often as I can in these books. But there's a restaurant near me called Trina's Starlight Lounge, and my roommate and I go there all the time. We go pretty much every Sunday for brunch. So we've gotten to be pretty good friends with a lot of the staff there, and I think ever since I was working on Pokemon, I have always taken whatever Emily and I can't finish. Emily's my roommate. Whatever we can't finish to Trina's to just like give to the staff.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, it's like, hey, do you guys want an entire cake that looks like a Pokemon? And they're like, sure, cool, great. Um, and so yeah, they would get a lot of leftovers from from recipe testing, which was always great. It's very very much appreciated that they would lend us their palettes.
Be like, well, I can't tell you what I'm working on due to NDAs, but I'm sure that this face on this piece of food I'm giving you will give you no hints at all. You'll
Oh my
never
god!
guess.
So what I would usually do is I would make as many, like if it was like a tray of cupcakes or something like that, I would make as many as I needed to get the face right to take a picture of it, and then those would be the ones that like I would eat, and then anything that like, oh, people can't know what this is, they would get a different version of it.
Well, I just imagine you did the sensible thing, made six cakes with Pokemon faces and the other six with Digimon faces, and then no one's gonna know what you're doing at that point.
Exact, completely sensible.
Oh my god! And I mean, someone's gonna get their hopes. They're like, "Oh my god, they're finally doing it! It's the Agumon Cupcake Cookbook I've always been wanting." Bandai listened to my hopes and dreams.
Angemon Parfait, here we go.
Honestly, you know what? That is a weird one of like how popular Digimon is even still. I'm like, I'm shocked that's not become a thing. But you know what? I'm sure I've just willed it into existence now. So someone will do
I,
it.
I'm gonna get an email from my editor tomorrow morning being like, "All right, Jarrett, we got a doozy for you.
How
How do
ready
you
are you to
feel?"
learn about the world of Digimon and food?
Oh my god. I did. You know what? I watched a fair few episodes of the Digimon cartoon when I was a kid. I remember being like fascinated by it because I was like, this is like very strange, much more aggressive Pokemon.
Oh, the best part, it still holds up. I'm incredibly biased, but they re-released a bunch of them
Oh,
on
really?
Blu-ray. Yeah, you can get the first two seasons on Blu-ray. And the wildest thing is I don't remember if you remember because it was memed for a really long time, especially because of the soundtrack. They did
Mm.
the old Fox dub of the movie was infamously like good bad because they basically
Oh.
they smushed three completely unrelated OVAs and made it a 90-minute movie where they forced related them together even though they were nothing alike.
Oh my gosh.
They re-released that recently. Discotech Media did that, and the craziest thing was they kept the original version of it. Someone still had a original master because it was out in theaters, so there was a film print out there for it. But they were able to still release it with all the licensed music. Because I mean, when you think of Digimon,
Oh
I'm sure
yeah.
you think of Bare Naked Ladies 1 week. Because I mean, what other what other song would you think of?
That is buck wild.
So the craziest thing about that is that not only did they release that on Blu-ray, they also got all the still working or still alive voice actors in English, and they brought a new dub for each one of those OVAs. So you now can either watch the original butchered one from the 2000s or a brand new one with all the original voice actors.
That is so cool.
Yeah, like they do so much. Like I'm such a sucker for like those like releases of like, listen, did this need to happen? No. Is that make it even better? Of course it does.
Yeah. Am I gonna throw them all of my money?
A
Yep.
hundred percent, 100%.
Wow.
Um, Other things though, not Digimon related, unfortunately. Um,
Sorry,
n-
sorry everybody.
oh no, like yeah, this is nothing new for us with it. Um, One of the things I wanted to ask you with it was because we talked about difficulty before, and
Mhm.
you were kind of talking about how you want to balance it for it. What's the best way to kind of describe it in terms of like what is difficulty for a cookbook? Like, is it ingredients to procure? Is it time? Is it like the actual actions needed? Like, for you yourself, how do you kind of dictate cooking difficulty?
For cooking difficulty in these books, I usually attribute it to um, uh, technique, technique and time. Although I won't always like. There's a ramen recipe in here that takes you like 2 days to make, right? Um, but it's not hard. Like all the things you have to do to make it are not difficult. It just takes as long as it takes. You're simmering bones for like a day. And because like I don't expect anybody to actually like leave a burner on for 24 straight hours, you got to break that up over a couple of days, and then you know maybe maybe you want to take a nap from all that from all that topping off the water of the ramen stock, and then you make it on the third day. So that's not one that I would call difficult. I'd probably put that like under intermediate, and then you can judge for yourself whether you want to put in that much time. Um, but then something like the Cosmic Tower Burger is actually pretty hard to make because you have to make a custom bun for it. You have to, because you're making 12-inch wide burger patties, you have to have like a certain level of like technique and confidence at flipping a giant burger without like dropping it on the stove or into the fire. uh, um, it's tricky. Like there's more technique there that like is not really common technique because nobody ever expected to be asked to make a 12-inch in diameter cheeseburger that is also 12 inches tall. um, so like that's difficult. um, Difficult and time consuming. um, I think in my Pokemon book, I think the two hardest recipes that we put in there were the two legendaries that came from Scarlet and Violet, Miraidon and Koraidon. Um, and those one of them got a souffle, which are historically difficult to make if you've never, especially if you've never done any kind of baking before. And the other was like a layered cake that was basically two layers of ube cake, and then sandwiched in between them was an entire lemon flavored cheesecake. um,
Oh, okay.
yeah, and so like, and then you have to do like a bunch of difficult work for decorating. And so it was like that. Those two are very difficult because while one requires a lot of technique, the other one requires both like a lot of time and patience, and you're making two different kinds of cake, which you know maybe you're good at one and not at the other. But just because it required like two very different techniques of cake making, and then also like assembling it is kind of tricky because you're putting it again an entire cheesecake on top of uh, an ube sponge cake. Um, so for something like this, it's a little easier because there's there's just stuff that like nobody ever expected to have to make this, and therefore you may not necessarily like I had never made a 12-inch wide burger before, so
Well, I mean, listen, my Friday nights are very different than your Friday nights. Difficulty may vary on those kind of choices.
we just come from two different worlds, man.
Yeah, some people look at serving sizes as a rule. Some people look at serving sizes as a suggestion.
The lines, they blur.
Nothing in all the years I've been with my wife, nothing makes me laugh more than when I just know that she's going to get upset when I tell her the serving size because she never looks at that stuff. And I'll make her food, and before I give it to her, I'll be like, "Oh, here it is. Here's everything I made." And she's like, "Oh, okay. Like, well, what's yours?" And I'm like, "Well, first, let me tell you how many people this is for." This is for a family of four and a half. I don't know where this half man came from, but this is for four and a half people. And she'll look at me and she'll be like, "I would eat this entire thing. I don't know what you're talking. Where are these four very tiny human beings meant to eat this serving?"
I listen. I hear ya. I it just storing the leftover burger from Big Bang Burger was like, what do we?
Yeah, legend has it you're still trying to finish it. The goal is to by launch date, maybe it'll be done.
I know launch date will be like 13 months after I made it.
It's held for a really long time.
Yeah, I should have just frozen it and just like a wedding cake, like on the anniversary, I just cut off another
Oh
slice.
my god.
It took me 14 years to finish eating this burger, but by God, I did it.
Yeah, it's just progressively gotten better tasting is the weird thing. I don't know if that's from the long-term food poisoning, but it gets new flavors as the years go on.
It's the freezer burn really
Yeah.
adds a certain je ne sais quoi.
One of the things I've been really curious about asking you is not only have you been doing like cookbooks and like writing for like food for a while, but you've got plenty of other works writing for comics and other things like that for it. What kind of got you like what's if not like your like priority for it, or like what kind of got you into writing in general for it? Was it like food stuff initially first, comics, a bit of both, or where did you in writing kind of get started?
So, I mean, I had always been really like I was really into writing as a kid. And I always loved any kind of like creative writing projects we would have. Like we're talking like elementary school, anything where I got to like write my own little story or writing skits for like being in Boy Scouts, stuff like that. Like just really enjoyed that. I wrote a couple of plays with friends when I was in high school, one of which got published. It was just something I always really enjoyed doing, and not to toot my own horn, but was like pretty good at. Um, but I never like really thought of it as like a viable career, just and not because I think writing is not a viable career. I just mean like for me personally, I was like, oh, that's not something I want to do like professionally. I just like doing it. Um, and flash forward a bunch of years. I go to college. I go through like three different majors before I finally just drop out. And a year or so later, I was writing professionally for just like a bunch of different websites. I was doing some travel writing for USA Today, and I was doing um, like beauty tips for Tyra Banks's old website, weirdly. I did some travel writing for Livestrong. I wrote kind of, I don't know if you remember the website ehow.com,
Oh
but I
yeah.
wrote some video game
Oh
tutorials for
oh yeah.
ehow.com.
We'll go on the Wayback Machine and find some choice articles, I'm sure.
Oh my God, please don't. How embarrassing. um, but yeah, I was doing stuff like that for a while. I did like a little bit of food writing, a little bit of travel writing, and just little bit of everything. Um, and then I eventually found my way into the comic industry by running a very small comic convention in Maine. And that is kind of like what got my toe into the industry as a whole. I started making a ton of different connections. I met my business partner Bob. We run an agency that represents comic talent for their convention appearances together. We also do like their art sales and stuff. And so I ended up with this vast network of other writers, and then comic artists, and then publishers and editors, and like everybody that works at various publishers. And along the way, I met my friend Danica. Her name's Danica Bryan. She's a comic artist based out of Canada. Um, we we immediately hit it off. She is also a big Persona fan. She is a huge JRPG fan. Um, we loved all of the same things, like all of the same anime, all of the same manga, all of the same video games. Like we just like we're just two sides of the same coin.
So you're saying we need to line this up for next week. We gotta get him on the show.
Oh my God, Danica! Oh my gosh, that would be incredible. Um, so yeah, we really got along super well. Became really close very quickly. We were friends for like 4 years, and we were both just kind of like on the periphery of the industry. She had self-published her own book at the time, and we were both like, you know, kind of wanting to do more in the industry. We wanted to make stuff, and like get stuff like published by any of the publishers that are around at the time. And we thought, what if we just made something? Like, what if we, what if we just made a book? And at the time, like Heartstopper wasn't really a thing. Check Please wasn't a thing. These like very big queer young adult romance books. Um, and that certainly wasn't there certainly weren't things like that when Danik and I were growing up. The best you could hope for would be like um, a fan translation of something online, like Given or something like that. um, and so we're like, what if we made something that like our like 19-20-year-old selves would have been really obsessed with, like something that is gay and romantic and sweet and not problematic.
So it's hard to get all those boxes checked. You can normally do 2 out of 3. Very rare to get 3 out of 3.
Yeah, exactly. So we're like, let's do it. And I had been into cooking since I was a little kid, so I was like, what if we do something about like two boys that work in the same restaurant and fall in love? Great. We'll call it Chef's Kiss. Haha. And I made that my National Novel Writing Month project in 2017. I wrote the entire script for the whole graphic novel in a month. Danica took the script and she started doing concept art, like character designs and all that stuff. We did some sample pages. In 2018, we gave it to a bunch of publishers to look at, and one of the publishers was Oni Press, and I was very good friends with James Lucas Jones, who was the editor in
Oh
chief at the
yeah.
time. Yeah, and I mean, I texted him, like I texted him the pitch. I said, "Hey, do you guys think you would be into this?" And I kind of gave him like, a few sentences about what it was, and he was like, "Oh, absolutely, yeah, yeah, absolutely, yeah. Here's the editor that you'll want to work with on that. Here's her email. Send it over to her, and yeah, we'll get things going." I was like, "Great." And so in 2018 we sold it, and it didn't end up coming out until 2022. Is that right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yep. Thanks. Thanks for fact checking me.
Oh, you're good. I've just got like my 9 screens of just nothing but facts about you and your books in front of me. So gotta do
God,
something with it.
Why are you so obsessed with me? My
Well,
God.
it'll only last a week if it makes you feel better. It's very short lasting.
I don't know if that makes me feel better. You could stretch it out a little bit.
Okay, yeah. We'll bump it to April. We got time for April. It's okay.
Oh, beautiful. Um, yeah. So yeah, it dropped in 2022, and it was a pretty big hit. We won a bunch of awards for it. We got a lot of accolades for it. We were nominated for an Eisner and a Glad Media Award. We won an Alex Award from the American Library Association, and then a bunch of different literary and library organizations all had nothing but good things to say about it. And it just kind of went from there. There's a sequel coming out next year, and I've worked on a bunch of other smaller projects like anthologies and things like that. And I have a pretty major project coming out later this year on Webtoon that will be quite long. I think we got like 40 episodes. And that is unfortunately as much as I can say about that right now, but I have been working on it for a little over a year now. And I hope people will like it.
I mean, is that like kind of normal to really have those like baked in ahead of time as much as possible, especially for like those, I assume, like weekly serialized stuff?
Absolutely. I've written half of it, and I don't think we have gotten complete art on any of it yet. We've gotten like line art, like final pencils and inks on several of the episodes, but I haven't seen anything like colored or lettered yet. But yeah, for anything like that, whether it's like a monthly series coming out like in floppies and single issues, it's always a good idea to have like a few in the can that are like ready to go and be published and printed. So you have like a nice cushion of time to just keep making the rest of it. So yeah, I think I will be done with my part of this project by the time like the first episode comes out, and then the rest will land on the art team to keep on schedule, which they've done a great job of doing. I have no worries there.
It's been so interesting, especially someone like I've followed like independent publishing, especially for like comics online and in like the retail and print space, and even like the fan funded scene for so long. It's been so just like even now crazy going into all these big, small bookshops, large in between, and like you just see the like array of stuff that gets printed that normally I feel like would have, if not been online only, like something like you mentioned before of like having to wait for like half Google Translate fan scanlations.
Yeah.
It's just been so crazy of like not only the like incredibly diverse sort of options there are now in terms of stuff to read that's out there, but to see that it's successful, that other publishers are coming up, that even like originally online only publishers are now dipping their like foot into like the like brick and mortar space is just so surreal to see.
Yeah, I mean, even Webtoon specifically, like,
Yep.
it's a platform for webcomics, and
when
Now
when I
they're
first saw like I don't know what it was, but it was maybe like 2 years ago or more. When I like went to a store and I saw a webtoon published book in person, I was like, I feel like this shouldn't exist.
Yeah, and I think what's cool about it though is that like it shows that even on a platform where you are, kind of more or less giving the material away for free, you can still print all of that into a book and still end up with like a massive seller. I mean, look at Lore Olympus. Like that started as
Oh
a web
yeah.
comic, and now, I mean, I mean, how many copies have those books sold? Um, the same with Heartstopper. I mean, Heartstopper was a web comic and then became a New York Times bestselling graphic novel series, and now is like an award-winning Netflix show. Like it's just it's fascinating to watch the evolution of all this stuff.
Well, and it's especially interesting because I think we kind of take the success of a lot of this over the last 4 or 5 years almost for granted in the sense of like bookstores especially were in such a bad place pre 2020.
Oh, absolutely.
So
Yeah.
like now we are like the fact like I forget who did the story for it, but there was a really great um video and written interview I had watched last year with the CEO of like Barnes and Noble, and it was so funny of like they especially were like not a store you would think is growing, let alone opening new stores and like other things they've been doing with like the way they've been supporting and working with like smaller mom and pop bookshops and stuff forward of like it's been a natural kind of growth in the sense of like I can think of a handful of things that have kind of led to like print media and just people reading in general being on the rise, but I think it's because it's been so many various different things. It's just been kind of like rising tide lifting all boats sort of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And listen, I'm a big proponent of people reading.
Yeah.
Whether it's physical books or online. It's like, yeah, just read. It's great.
So for you, especially because it's funny, I didn't even think we would sort of get to it. But with the convention you had started, is that something you are still doing, or is that like still a thing that's existing, whether with your involvement all the way or not?
Oh no, yeah, we did it for, I think that con lasted for like 3 years before we shut it down. It was just like it was too much work and not enough return for the folks that owned it, which was fine. We went our separate ways, um, and then I started doing all of this.
Well, it's kind of funny though because I'm like at that point, had you been going to many other conventions before starting your own with it? Because it is one of those. There are so many different sides when it comes to attending conventions, where they're at, what they're about, the communities that they kind of attract, working directly there versus you're invited there as a guest, or you might just be doing some panels there. Um, like I'm sure you've kind of got such a drastically different notion of it now with going to different shows, whether it be invited or just going on your own and stuff now.
Yeah, I mean, the very first convention I ever went to was actually Anime Boston, and that would have been back in like 2005, probably. Um, and that was the very first convention I ever went to, like as a fan. I was in college. I went to Northeastern, so like down the street from, almost literally down the street from where Anime Boston is held. Um, and I loved going, like loved the experience of being there with friends and going to panels and shopping, like at all the different tables, like whether it was vendors that had imported DVDs and whatnot from Japan, or artists making fan art and stuff like that. It was just like all really cool. Really enjoyed that experience, and now like I couldn't tell you the last time I went to a convention for fun. um,
It's all work. There's no fun anymore.
it's funny, like I think I've like lost my patience for this is going to sound so snobby, but it's just like I don't want to wait in line for anything.
Oh my god. No, I just was talking about this and I'm such a nobody's nobody. I was talking about this recently though of I probably haven't paid to go to a convention in at least like 15 years.
Oh,
And
same.
I'm
Yeah.
like and I was thinking about it like I remember when I went to Anime Expo for the first time, we had applied for media badges,
Hmm.
but I think someone was either being really nice or just thought that oh well because of their name they're probably just with Atlas. So we ended up getting industry
Oh, sure.
badges. And
Cool.
at that point it's like oh well not only is every line non-existent to you. You then don't even realize like oh like how much some of these badges can go for, and it's not that thing
Oh,
of like
yeah.
oh well I don't appreciate getting it for free because like I always am very much like aware of like I want to at least try and make the most bang for my buck when I'm here in terms of either like interviewing people or doing other things, whether it be
Hmm.
like working and doing panels. But it is that thing of like oh yeah like the idea of just going to something as a fan anymore is just such a foreign concept to me because I almost have to like drag myself kicking and screaming to not go into something in work mode.
Yeah. 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 I think the last time, like, the last time I even remotely went to a convention for fun was that New York Comic Con I was telling you about when I got the text from my agent about Pokemon. But like even that, like I didn't go to any panels. I didn't like I was not there shopping for exclusives. Like I went because like you know I could, and all of my friends, a ton of my friends were either guests of the show or were tabling in Artist Alley or whatever. And so I went really just to like go hang out with them. And like I watched somebody's table for like 20 minutes while they went to the bathroom or whatever. Watch another friend's table for like an hour and a half while they go to their panel, do their panel, and come back. And then eventually I was just like, well, I'm tired of being here, and I would leave because I had that power, which was the sweetest power of all. Was there's
It's freedom.
nothing. Oh, sweet freedom! Like anytime I go to a convention as a guest, it's like I'm there like 30 to 60 minutes before the show opens, and I'm usually there like closing down my table or saying goodbye to people or whatever for at least another 20 to 30 minutes after the show ends. So they're usually anywhere between like 2 and 5 12-hour days depending on the size of the convention, and it's a lot of just being like on and signing books for folks and speaking on panels and just as somebody who's like a mix of extroverted and introverted, like the introverted part of me starts screaming real loud by the end of the day and is like, what if we just went to the hotel and turned off all the lights and ordered DoorDash instead of going to dinner with your friends?
It's always so funny. Like my my wife has always been like, "Oh, it'd be interesting to like try vending one day, like
Oh,
at a convention." And I'm like, "That sounds fun until you realize no one does it for just one day, and you are
hmm.
literally held hostage there the whole time." It's like if it was
Yeah,
not for the fact that you need that money to live, that is the only reason those people are doing it. They're not doing it for the love of the vend.
yeah. The love of the vend. Yeah, it's I make a fair amount of my income just doing actual writing, but like a big part of my income really comes from doing these events and selling signed copies of books that I've worked on. And yeah, I love doing it, because every con I do, I have friends there. At Emerald City Comic Con, we have a whole row that's all queer comic writers and illustrators, and we have unofficially been calling it Lavender Lane. And we're always kind of in the same row, the same part of the row. Every year for the past like 3 or 4 years now, and so all of our fans that come to the show to see us, they know exactly where to find us because we're always in the same spot, um, and that's really helpful because like you know if I'm sitting next to my friend DJ, DJ Kirkland's a comic book illustrator, great, 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 great illustrator. Love him to death. Um, I'm sitting next to DJ, like I know that I can like go to the bathroom and like not have to like put my tablecloth over my stuff or like put up a sign because it's like, well, DJ will just watch this for like a minute while I go use the restroom, and I don't have to worry about like getting robbed or anything like that. um, uh, but yeah, the idea of doing a con as a fan again is deeply foreign.
And and it's funny is like at least for me, it never really comes from a thing of like, oh, well, I wouldn't ever want to do that. It is just that thing of
Oh
like
no,
you just do it for so long that it would almost you'd almost would have to like reset yourself or like you would like kind of have to be in a situation where it's not something that you would normally go to. Like I would have to go like to I don't know. I was like thinking about even like relative like kind of comparisons because like there are very different ones of oh a good one I joke about with a friend of mine who does like audiobook readings is he was explaining to me that there are like literature conventions and then ones that
yeah,
are like they invite a lot of guests that will do like artists and stuff but they will also invite all of the like audiobook narrators
cool,
and he does a lot
yeah,
of like those like smutty romance novel audiobooks so like when he goes to a
sounds great.
convention he is inviting a very different crowd than when he is recognized for anime video game character.
Yeah, yep, absolutely.
So it's like it's kind of like the weird stuff like that of like even the funny thing of like and I'm sure like you've seen it as well like you would probably think there's a lot of crossover and there's like definitely some but like even something like going to a anime convention versus a comic convention are two very different crowds.
Yeah, and I've been a guest at both, and I like both, but man, like the anime people are definitely like my people. Um, like I see them all like running, from behind my table, like old man Jarrett watching the kids run around on his lawn, and it's just like, oh yeah, I remember when I was like that. Um, and it's very sweet. It's like very nostalgic. I think my first anime convention that I was a guest at was Anime NYC. Um, and I think it was like I don't know, maybe like the third or fourth year that they did it. And I just remember like going and tabling and just like watching all of these like all different ages, but like specifically the younger ones, like the teens and 20 somethings, watching them like go around like caring about their convention experience and being like, holy shit, not a thing has changed other than what series are out right now, but just like the way that like anime kids comport themselves at an anime con
Oh,
is exactly the
100%.
same now as it was 20 years ago, and it's like that's actually very sweet.
Have there been any shows, whether it be like as like a guest or someone to get invited to, or even just to do like an artist alley for, you haven't had a chance to go to, you would like to?
Oh gosh, I mean, I would love to do Anime Expo for sure. I feel like that would be a lot of fun. There are some conventions abroad that I really want to go to. There's one called Lucca, which is in Italy.
Oh yeah.
Um, yeah, it's pretty famous for being just like a comic convention that happens in a huge old castle town, and it just takes over the whole town. So you'll have fucking nerd panels in like parts of a castle. Like I remember seeing like I think one of my colleagues was recording maybe like a podcast or a YouTube video or something like that, and they were just like talking with another creator, and the whole backdrop was this just like medieval setting, and it was so cool. And I was like, oh, I need to go there. I would love to do Tokyo Comic Con, for sure. Um, yeah, Angoulême is another comics festival that's in France. Would love to do that. Um, yeah, I feel like I've done like a lot of the ones that I really, really want to do. Um, I've done like all of kind of like the major American shows. Like I've done New York Comic Con, I've done San Diego.
Oh my god. The first time I ever did STCC, there's like, and it was wild. I haven't been in like 14 years. It was
Sure.
horrific then. I can only imagine what it's like now. It's like, oh my god.
Yeah, I haven't done SDCC since pre-COVID, and funny enough, I used to love going. I went like for 10 years in a row or close to it, and I just remember like there you I was gonna say you couldn't pay me to you could pay me to go like if you
There
were
is a price. Inquire
yeah there is a
within.
price yeah there is a price and it is you need to cover all of my expenses and also give me several $1,000s and then I would go. I would sign all day if you wanted me to, but as far as like going of my own
I
accord on my own volition, nope.
Ironically, I think that would be the one case where you could convince me to vend and not be an attendee.
Sure.
Because then at that point you don't have to worry about lines. Because like even back then when I went, Comic Con did not have as much of a reputation for being line con, but it doubly is now. It's like I just hear horror stories of friends going and be like, well, I either got to see the one panel I had to wait in line all day for, or I got the one Power Ranger toy that was only here for one day.
I could not like, and that's the kind of stuff that like as a fan, I like could not tolerate that at this point in my life. Like I would not, I couldn't imagine sitting outside and getting heat stroke uh,
But I've got to hear
outside of
Kevin
Hall
Smith
H.
talk to me. When else will Kevin
Yeah,
Smith, famous man of always talking into every microphone given to him, when else can I hear Kevin Smith?
Kevin Smith, who I think I remember like an article at some point that was like, is this true? There was like an article or like maybe it was even just something that he said, but he was just like, I've signed so many of my own books that it actually decreases their value.
Oh yeah, no, that was a line because I remember, my dad, and I'm the same way. We love going into used bookstores, and he would always look for, I forget what it was, but definitely like one of his first books. I think it's like Silent Bob Speaks. And
Oh yes.
every time he would find a copy, it would be signed. And it's like, statistically, this shouldn't be the case. Like, it's like going to, it's like you would, like back when he was alive, it would be like an anime convention. No, sorry, it'd be like a comic convention happening, and Stan Lee wasn't there. It would be like, oh,
Yeah.
did something happen to Stan Lee? Like, did he not get the memo? He has to go to every one of these?
Yeah, exactly.
There's like, did you see like they're doing like a like either I forget if it was like his personal assistant or someone like they're doing like a Kickstarter for like look at like how poorly Stan Lee was treated in his later years.
I like I don't know what to make of any
What
of that. It
what I love
seems
about that is everyone I've showed that to, no one's like, "Oh no, really?" It was like, "Of course, this man was 129 years old." There was no way
yeah.
that, "Oh, well, I'm going to die doing what I love, charging people $1,000 for a photo of me sitting down."
I it just I I think to I obviously like did not know him personally, but I ran into him a couple of times at cons and he was always very sweet. He did seem like he was enjoying being there, but I cannot speak to the conditions that he was existing under, especially in those last few years. But it just seemed like, man, let this guy rest.
Oh yeah, do anything. Take him to a TJ Maxx. Do whatever. Do anything else besides be stuck in every large convention center from LA to New York.
Yeah, but boy, getting to hear him say Excelsior in the flesh just once was great.
Oh yeah, he's definitely like he's the kind of guy I would want to run into, but would not want to take up his time, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. That is exactly how I felt. Every time I would run into him, I'd just be like, oh man. Actually, I remember there was a time that I was at SDCC. It was one of the first few years that I went, and I was like just trying to make my way past the Marvel booth, and it just happened to be right when Stan was about to start doing a signing. So he had just like appeared on stage, and just suddenly it was like a beacon went up, and the entire con tried to fit into Marvel's whatever 50 by 50 booth in the
Hall
center of the
H
floor. And I was
appeared
like,
in the entire center right there.
And I was like, "Oh, I'm just trying to leave." And I was like, I saw, I just remember like, "Oh, this is the only time I'm going to look up, see Stan Lee, and immediately turn around and go in the other direction." Like, I was like, I don't want to be anywhere near whatever's about to happen, and I just left. I bolted.
That is too funny.
Yeah.
Last convention thing, just because I'm always curious about it from an artist alley kind of point of view. For you,
Sure.
especially with the stuff you've done, is there ever that thing of do I bring what I want people to buy or do I bring what I know people will buy? Because there's always got to be that thing of like, oh, well, I'd love it if someone bought this, but I'm sure most people are going to come here to want to buy this.
You know what? I generally do pretty well with everything that I have worked on that I would want to have at a convention. Like if you go on my Instagram and you look at any of my booth setups, you see that like half the table is cookbooks, or a third of the table is cookbooks, a third of it is like chef's kiss related stuff, and then a third of it is just like merch of some kind, whether it's like stickers, bookmarks, whatever. And some of the stickers are chef's kiss related, some, I've got enamel pins that are chef's kiss, and then I just have like stuff that's just like goofy sayings that I've come up with, or what have you. And slap that on a sticker. And yeah, all the chef's kiss stuff does great. Um, the cookbooks all sell quite well. I think where I'm going to start running into like, oh God, how do I do this? Is when I have four more cookbooks come out this year and have the same amount of real estate of a 6x2 or 6x3 foot table.
You'll just have to start lotting pre-orders ahead of time. Just be like, let me know what you've bought, and then we'll just like we'll get the signature ready for you.
Yeah, and it's so crazy because like so many of the properties that I've worked on are pretty evergreen. Like I feel like between Pokemon and Persona, like I'll never be able to bring enough of those to a convention.
Do you have like what's the item that if someone brings to you is like, oh, they get some, like they get some kudos, they get some bonus points. Like what's an item that if someone brings to you to get signed that's like, oh man, you're a real one.
Oh gosh, I think if somebody brings me a copy of either, if they bring me a copy of either All We Ever Wanted, which is an anthology that I worked on, it was actually it's funny, we had sold uh, Chef's Kiss already, and I think we were in progress on it. But Danica and I got offered this little spot in an anthology, and um, and we did it. So that actually technically is the first published thing that we had published together, um, because it was just like a short like 6 or 8 page story. If people bring me that, I know like, oh, you've been following since like day one. And then if people bring me copies of Murder Hobo Chaotic Neutral, which is my buddy Joe Schmalke's creator-owned D&D inspired book, then I know like, oh, you somehow know that I'm attached to this. Which like there's absolutely no shade there. I loved working on those books, but it's just like it's not something that really like comes up if you like look for like my bibliography. Because it's like, yeah, that's Jarrett. He does the cute queer romance and the cookbooks, and Murder Hobo is exactly like what it sounds. It's a super super violent, completely chaotic fantasy comic
Yeah,
series.
some like to call it the spiritual successor to Chef's Kiss. It's a very dark alternate take on the universe.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. It's like I am for sure known as like the person that does like soft boy, like just cute, sweet romance things. Uh and then also murder hobo.
Well, I mean, listen, the term soup kitchen had to come from somewhere.
Exactly. Oh man. But yeah, every now and then somebody brings that. I did a story in my friend Mirka. She has Mirka Andolfo. She's an Italian comic creator. She has a series through Image called Sweet Paprika. Um, and she invited me to do a story in the anthology style thing that she's doing with Sweet Paprika right now. And so sometimes people will bring those to me to sign, and I'm like, oh, cool. Like, it's always really exciting because I got to do a like food related thing in this. And if you know Sweet Paprika, it's like a pretty like, like sexy tongue in cheek thing about like demons and angels. And it's a really fun series. And I was very, very delighted that Mirka asked me to be part of it.
So, final kind of question, more tell us a little bit about yourself, but just to kind of close the loop on video games a little bit here.
Yeah.
Either what have you been playing, watching, reading, anything you want to recommend to anybody, or just gab about before we get out of here?
Oh yeah, sure. Let's see. Um, Playing. I've been playing the new. I haven't picked it up in like a few weeks just because of traveling and stuff. But I had started playing the new Dragon Age game. Um,
Was this before or after it went free? I had a friend literally like just buy it before it was given away on PlayStation Plus. They're like, I feel like this was intentionally, they were waiting for my friend to buy it, and then she was like, so this is why you give it away to everybody for free. I'm trying to be nice, I'm trying to give BioWare some money, and you're like, you know what, fine, fuck it. You guys don't want to buy it, we'll give it away.
no, actually, I think I bought it like on launch week. I happened to take like several $100s of stuff that I just like did not want anymore because I've been trying to like downsize just the stuff that I have in my place,
Got a Marie Kondo
and I
it.
just like yeah, right. Truly, that's exactly what I did. And I just was like, okay, look, let's be real, Jarrett. You are not going to play any of these PlayStation 3 or 4 games ever again. Let's just go ahead and take these to GameStop. Um, and I also happen to have still my PS3 and both. Yes, that's right, both of my PS4s. And I was like, I don't need any of this. So I took like a huge backpack and then two canvas bags full of just stuff to GameStop, and they gave me a ludicrous amount of store credit. And they were like, "Oh, do you want to like buy anything today?" And I was like, "I mean, not really. As the whole point was trying to get rid of stuff." But I guess Dragon Age did just come out, so yeah, go ahead and give me that, and that's what I walked away with.
Okay.
Yeah,
Have you enjoyed what you played so far?
I have. Yeah, it's been fun. I like all the characters, all the new ones and all the returning ones and stuff. Like it's been fun. I feel like I haven't been as charmed by it as I have previous Dragon Age
No, I mean I
installations.
think the most interesting thing I think that's actually came out of Velgard has been the discussion about it, like the from the writing and characters and just like general like consistency and world tone for it because like it's so funny of like Dragon Age has been around so much that like if you look at even going from Inquisition to Veilguard, they look like completely different universes, but it's like it's kind of funny of like looking at the pros, looking at the cons, and from someone who's very aware of that world, but I haven't played Veilguard myself, it's been funny of
Mm.
like people being like, "Oh my god, like I love how it plays, but I hate the characters." Then some people I know like love the characters, but they hate the writing, and I'm like, that's such an interesting one of being like, it clearly was trying or started in so many different ways that like I'm more impressed that game came out in general, but it is very interesting of like I think it's easy to look at the negative discourse of that game and be like, "Oh, well if you hate it, you must just hate because X, Y, and Z." Whereas like I think there are a lot of really interesting, especially in the writing department, constructive criticisms to be had in that game that you normally don't see in a lot of like fantasy RPGs.
Yeah, for sure. I feel like for me too, like I just sometimes games that are like that big in scope and that big in world and that big in terms of like the number of characters that you're able to like play with and mix and match with. It's just like, geez, like man, I miss the days when like your party was four people and it was the same four people the whole time. Like this is like the
We're gonna be
like
so insufferable in the old folks' home. It's gonna be like, all right, Grandma, get back to
oh
get
my
back
god.
to your turn-based RPG room. I'm gonna be playing WoW 7.
Oh my God, what a nightmare. Yeah, I just like I think about the simpler times where like y- it's Chrono Trigger obviously quite famously like you could switch between like a lot of different parties. There were a lot of different combinations and stuff, but it was in terms of like how big games are now, it was manageable because it's like, oh, I could fully flesh out every single one of these characters' arcs and like their whole stories and backstories and stuff and like feel like I know every single one of them because the game itself, even with all the time travel and stuff, is not huge. It's Super Nintendo sized. Um, but now it's like, oh my God, you've got like a whole planet to like to go around, or a whole continent to go around, or in a lot of cases like whole galaxies. Like if you look at games like Mass Effect, and then your party could be any combination of three of you of like 12 different people, and it's like I don't who's got the time.
Can I interest you in a tiny indie RPG? You probably never heard of it, called Metaphor ReFantazio.
Oh, you can.
I
You
will
can interest
say
me in
the
this.
funny thing about that is definitely a game that on the outside probably looks like some massive, ginormous 100-hour plus RPG with way too many party members. One of the things I love about it the most is how focused it actually is.
All right.
Uh, de-
Yes, you can. You can interest me in this.
Also, a lot of cooking. A lot of cooking in Metaphor. Food is
Um,
never not a big thing because traveling is such a big thing in that game. One of the best parts about it is literally every time you go to a new town or a new village, it is okay. Well, what is their local delicacies?
oh my God, this sounds so up my alley. I can't believe nobody has recommended it to me
I know.
until
I mean,
just now.
it's only sold a couple million copies, so I hope someone buys it.
Yeah, me too.
You know what? Actually, very tiny aside. Speaking about food, though, because I had pulled up some Atlas games in terms of like with food and stuff. I was curious. Have you played any Persona 5 Strikers?
I haven't. Is that like a great sin? I feel like I would enjoy
No,
it, but I have not given.
most people haven't played it. I mean, it sold pretty well, but I think people
Yeah,
thought it was going to be a Warriors game, which it's definitely not. Um,
right.
Definitely recommend it, if not for the story and music alone. But the best part about it, very similar to Metaphor, it's a road trip that takes place all over Japan, and especially if you have any history of like going to like big and small like cities all over Japan, they do a
Hmm.
really good job of highlighting a lot of the different towns they go to, especially if you've actually been there.
Cool. I see. That's how I feel about playing the Yakuza games. It's like, oh wait, I know where that
See,
town
I like that
character
about
is.
Yakuza, but they also like have three towns. It's been 9 games, and we've been in Yokohama for at least 2 decades. It's like, guys, there's other places in Japan. Let's go.
Give me Yakuza Hokkaido, or what are we doing?
I kind of was like, I don't know why, I was getting weird vibes after the last, like, not the last one, but like in 7 when they mentioned Koreans a lot and they introduced them as like a faction of like gang members. I was like, oh, Yakuza in Korea would be very interesting.
Oh, that would be cool.
But they said no, we're going to go to Hawaii because we already made the assets from Yakuza 8. And I went, okay, all right, I'll wait.
Mm. It's like, well, I mean, I'll still play it, but
But yes,
I'll be thinking.
Persona 5
I'll be thinking
Strikers
about the
is
made-up game.
hilariously cheap. Like I think it often goes on sale like physically or digitally for like less than $10 all the time. It's very
Oh,
good.
fantastic! All right, cool. Does it matter what platform?
No, I mean it's on Switch. It's a little chunky, but I mean if you like playing it portably, it's a totally serviceable way to play it. But like, do you normally either play on like PC, Nintendo, or PlayStation?
I am a Nintendo and PlayStation
Yeah, the Switch
fella.
version, probably less likely to find under 10, but even then, it still goes for like less than $20 on Switch.
Hmm,
Uh, Super serviceable, super
cool.
serviceable.
I mean, look, that PS5's just hanging out. I might as well.
It's a dust magnet. It's a very pretty dust magnet and Wi-Fi router.
Oh my God, you're right. I'm I'm picturing the layer of dust that's on my PS5 right now, which is very sad.
No, that's my Series X. I feel so bad about my Series X, but I bought it for like the most superficial reason. I found like they made one console variant of the Series X, and it was when Halo came out, and it's really really pretty. It's got like this like star pattern all over it, and instead of the green at the
Oh,
top,
cool.
it's blue, and it looks really really cool. And I've been saying that to myself to justify it for the last 4 years for not playing on it.
Yeah, no, that's legit.
But yeah, besides game stuff, any other like whether it be books, movies, or shows you want to give people a recommendation to?
Oh my gosh, shows. What am I even watching right now? Um, I mean, this came out I think last year, but boy, if you've not watched Fall of the House of Usher on Netflix, what a treat. It's very gripping. My partner introduced that to me.
I have heard
Um,
nothing but good things about that, but that was one of like I for whatever reason I can force myself to watch a movie. I really have to really get into watching TV just because like my time is so awful. I'm terrible at having free time.
yeah, I feel that in my heart. That's actually kind of why I'm like struggling to think of like what have I watched? And it's like really not much this year even. Um,
I feel like though this year I have watched very little, but I've it's been one of the weirdest years of I've not heard so much people talk about like TV before this year. Like this seems like a very good TV year.
Yeah, I hear a lot of people like. I guess I will say like the things that I intend to watch. I do intend to watch season 3 of White Lotus.
Do not go
And
on TikTok. I got spoiled by HBO Max Asia. They spoiled a penis
oh
reveal, and I was like, "What if I wanted to get the penis reveal?" But no, HBO
wow,
Max Asia had to spoil it for me on their very funny TikTok.
you know what? I was spoiled for that reveal as
Oh,
well.
okay.
So
It wasn't just me.
yeah,
Thank God.
yeah. But we won't spoil it for the rest of you, who hopefully will have seen that episode by now.
Don't worry,
Um,
everybody. There are more than one penis scene in that show, as I'm sure no one is surprised to hear.
what pornography in my HBO program?
Listen,
I don't
I only
believe
started
it.
watching for Walter Goggins. That's the only reason I got into the show. I don't know
Oh
about
my
you.
God. Boy, oh boy, he's great. I listen. I cannot wait for the next season of Fallout.
I
I
haven't
cannot
even
wait for the
watched
next
that.
season.
I'm like, oh yeah, I know. I have no excuse too. It's like I can bum off someone's Prime account. I'm like, that is a show that upsets me when I think about it because I'm like, I was like, well, I love everyone in it. I love everyone who's attached to it creatively, but I bet it won't be that good. Comes out, everyone says it's amazing. Well, I'm sure I'll get around to watching it eventually. Still
Oh,
has not done it.
Spencer.
I haven't even started Severance. I'm like, what a failure.
Oh, see, I haven't started Severance either, and that's the other one that everybody's always talking about. That I'm like, oh, God, I gotta watch this now too. Like, again, who has the time? Who has the time to play all of these characters and play through this whole world and do all of the side quests?
No, I gotta go to Midwest anime conventions all day. I'm like, damn it, I have no time. Spends 3 days in a convention center.
Yeah. Yep. Yep. That will be me. Oh my God, I have a convention every single weekend next month, and I cannot believe I did that to myself.
Well, the next time you finally find yourself or get stranded in the Midwest, let me know, and I will at least throw a copy of Persona 5 Strikers at you.
Oh man, I mean, I'll be a guest at C2E2,
Where's that at again? I forget where that is.
Chicago.
Oh, okay. Well, as someone, let me tell you, I'm pretty close because I'm in Kansas. That is a horrible drive. I've made that drive a couple of times. Needs to be a little closer.
Fair enough.
Chicago, you're real close to not being considered Midwest. Because if you have, like, as someone who lives literally in Kansas, the most middle of the Midwest possible, it always upsets me when I drive to Chicago because I'm like, this just feels like I'm driving to the East Coast. It's like, it's at the farthest edge of Illinois. It's like it
Yep.
doesn't even want to be in the Midwest.
You're right. Oh man, but yeah, that will be the closest I'll be in the near future anyway.
I don't blame you.
Yeah. Not for any real reason, just that's just how my schedule
Well,
shook out this
this
year.
is when everyone listening then has to let their local convention of choice to then hit up your agent to then get you over to a closer town.
Oh yes, actually, my agent is just my literary agent. I handle all my bookings myself.
Oh,
So, yeah,
no
just
middleman fee. You are the middleman.
I am the middleman. Yeah, similar to the way that you reached out to through my website to set this up.
So shocked that
That is
worked, by the
how.
way. You would not know how many people's website contact forms are just like an abandoned ghost town.
Yeah, I mean, my website definitely needs like an update in terms of like what I actually have in stock. Like everything that is on my website in my store, I have in stock, but I have stuff in stock that exists that is just not on my website yet. That is just what a missed opportunity.
Well, I am very grateful that you did actually write back, and I hopefully did not scare you away from keeping you on this for a horrifically long amount of time.
No, not at all. This was such a fun chat. Like, and I really meant what I said earlier. Like, I would happily come back on once the book comes out and you've had a chance to cook through it.
Well, I'm also just excited to post this because when I was looking up like interviews of yours, you've been interviewed plenty of times. I'm just glad we can finally get an interview that's just not me shoving a microphone in your face while you're stuck at your booth. This will be
Oh my God.
this will be the most relaxed interview of you on YouTube anyone's ever heard.
Yeah, for sure. It, it's funny, like you emailing me was how I knew that Persona had gone up for pre-sale.
You know what?
Because I
I
was like,
wish that was the first time. That has definitely not been the first. People being like, I remember messaging someone once to be like, "Hey, I'm really excited. This just got announced. Can you come on and talk about it?" And their first response back to me was, "Fuck."
oh my God, that's too funny. Yeah, I just I knew it was going to be any day because I just because like I know how the marketing cycles work on these at this point.
Oh, I mean, half
So
the
I was like,
time
all
it's
right.
just Amazon just jumping the gun all the time.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, I think when you emailed me, that listing was there, but I don't think there was a photo yet.
No.
Like the cover wasn't even on there. It was like literally just a blank listing for a book that might exist. Uh,
Listen, worst case scenario, it wasn't real. Best case scenario, I just talked to you about RuneScape recipes for 2 hours.
listen, I would do that too. Yeah, God, that was a fun book to work on. Uh, yeah,
The lore you unwillingly learned for those recipes.
I know it's so funny because like that was one of the books that I worked on that the publisher hired a lore author because I was like, look, I'm familiar with all of the food that's in here because you know I know what food is. Um,
What do you mean? Everyone doesn't know about the lore implications of Oziak's oatmeal? What do you mean? No one knows
yeah,
this?
exactly. Um, and so I was like, but I'm not familiar enough with it to like convincingly write in like the voice slash style of to like make it feel like an immersive experience. And they're like, no problem, we'll hire a lore author. It was my friend Sandy, uh, uh, did all of that stuff, but like I still absorbed a bunch of it just because like you go onto these like wikis or I'd have conversations with her and stuff, and it's like,
Well,
oh
yeah, I was
man.
gonna say it's almost got to be hard to not just get it through osmosis at that point.
Yeah, and that's exactly what it was. And so now, like, when people come to me at cons and they're like, "Oh, is this in there?" And I'm like, "Yeah, confidently, yes. I can say yes to. I can answer confidently any of the questions people ask about the food because I learned it all like on the fly."
Well, besides that and all the other stuff we'd kind of talked about, I'll throw your like website, links to other stuff, pre-order up on the show description. Where do you want people to find you online? Where's the best place for them to follow you consensually?
Consensually, you can consensually follow me on Instagram. That's the best place to follow me. It's the place where I'm probably the most active, um, and I generally am pretty good about responding to DMs too.
See, if I was more brave on my Instagram, I constantly am like, I have so many dumb things I want to post and put on there, but it's because there are so many social media platforms. It's like, oh, well, you got to do Facebook, you got to do Twitter, you got to do YouTube, you got to do this. It's like the ones that slip through the cracks are always the ones that I'm like, I feel like there's a part of me that could use Instagram so much better, and I've just been saying that for the last 4 years.
Listen, I feel that way also. I find that I have just like I just post whatever, like if like I'm on a trip with my partner or something like that, it's like, yeah, here's like a cute vacation picture, and like, oh, by the way, I wrote this Persona cookbook. Anyway, here's like 3 more vacation pictures.
Yeah, that's the proper ratio. That's how you want to do it.
Yeah. It's neat. It's funny seeing like what gets traction and what doesn't, and sometimes like my personal life stuff gets way more traction than like, hey, here's this cool project that I just finished, or that got us announced, and it's like, like, hey, this enormous IP, which like is not the case with Persona. It's like definitely like a lot of the most engagement I've gotten on a post in a bit, but yeah, more often than not, it's like, oh, here's a cute picture of me and my boyfriend, several hundred likes. Like, okay, cool.
So what we need is then when you get your physical copy in, just post with your boyfriend, them holding copies of the book, and then do it as a test comparison, another photo of just you holding it, and then we'll do some experiments to see like what's the algorithm like, what is it not like.
Yes, exactly. I'll put something about like my partner being the romanceable option.
I mean, listen, anything we can do to help, I think a safe round number of at least 9 million copies of this cookbook sold. Once we get to 9, I think we're one step closer to the SMT cookbook that no one asked for happening.
And yet, they want it.
It's true. Yes.
Ask for it.
Yeah. They don't know they want it, but it's going to happen.
Yes. You're welcome, society.
Well, thank you so much for talking. Everybody, thank you so much for listening. I hope you've learned a thing or two. Lord knows this is probably at least the second most amount of time we've spent on this show talking about food. So hopefully people learned a thing or 3, and we'll check out the book, and we will definitely have to bring you back on. At the very least, I'll have a story about how I almost burnt my kitchen down after my birthday. We can talk about that at least.
Look, you need to make it past that birthday so that I can wish you a happy birthday on the air.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. This was such a fun chat. And I'm excited to see how excited people are for this book. It's very heartening.
I have only really told a couple of people that we were chatting, and everyone's response has been overwhelmingly very, very excited, which is nice because normally when I have guests that I'm excited to have on the show, what'll happen is they'll go, "Who's that?" And then I'll explain why they should be excited, and then they'll be like, "Oh, that does sound interesting."
Yeah, it certainly takes the wind out of the sails, doesn't it?
I mean, listen, I'm that weirdo of like every guest I'm ever excited about, I have to remind myself of like, all right, I'm making a podcast that I like, which is why it is not popular. When I start making the one that everyone wants to listen to, then I will be popular.
Oh my God, I love it.
But yeah, thank you so much for chatting.
Awesome. Thank you so much, and we'll talk to you soon.
All right, see ya.
Bye.